Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. And with me, of course, is Mr. Matt Germain, and I'm Mark Corbett, and we're glad you're here. One crazy Canadian and some crazy Florida guy trying to figure the world out with spring training and everything else to boot. And man, we are glad to have you here. Oh, goodness, Matt. Hey, how you been doing, brother?
I'm thawing. I'm thawing very slowly. The weather's warming up 1 degree a week, I think, somewhere around there. I'm not in your weather, which I wish I was. I had planned to go, and I was going to go to Arizona as well, or to Las Vegas. So I would have been warm, but instead I'm suffering through the early start of spring in Canada, which is not always a quick turnaround.
But you've got such beautiful country up there. I got to say, every time I went to Canada, I always had a fantastic experience. Anytime had business to do, I'd make sure I'd have time to get off the road and enjoy everything that's there. So, wow. But coming to baseball, I got to say, we've been fortunate. I mean, the last month or so, we've been trying to look through spring training. We had Brent Carty on talking about the Blue Jays. We had Nat Gordo on talking from Play Tessie's podcast, talking about everything with the Red Sox. I've got feelers out for Nathan at Full Count Chaos. Hopefully we'll get him back here soon. I want to hit all the AL East guys. I want to have some fun.
Yeah, by all means.
We'll talk a little bit about the Yankees here in a bit. But it's been fun right now. And myself, too, I had a good time at the Tampa Baseball Museum recently. They had an event with the J.C. Newman Company and the creators of several fine cigars. And they were rolling out a new brand called the Tampa Smoker, which is after a team from years and years ago that was a minor league team here in Tampa. So that was pretty cool. The coolest thing about it, though, Matt, was I got to see Joe Madden and Larry Rothschild, two of the former Rays managers were there, and that was really cool. So it's quite the event. I'm not a smoker, but I enjoyed the time with those folks. Got to speak a little bit with each of them, and it was a neat evening.
Nice. No,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
Yeah. Yep. There's being a Rays fan. This is a RaysUP edition, just in case you guys and gals are wondering, and it's because Matt and I have plenty here in front of us. So much talk about stadiums, so much talk about ownership. And I've gotten tired. I mean, people come up and ask me and say, hey, what do you think's going to happen? I said, just walk. I want to tell them, walk away. Walk away from me now. I am feeling, when it comes to this, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to say anymore. And lo and behold, you and I and Craig Calcaterra last week, I think mentioned that there were some rumblings from the J.P. Peterson show about possibly some people putting forth an offer for the Rays. Mm-hmm. And it was still kind of subground. I wasn't really hearing anything else. JP, he had it. I mean, I heard Brody Brazil bring it up again, but said, what? Yeah, I don't know. It's just another river. And lo and behold, now there are three different groups who are interested in buying the Rays. All this going on while we have a deadline of March 31st. Of when Stu Sternberg and the Rays as they exist today are supposed to be have $700 million and getting ready to roll with a new stadium. There's a commitment that has to be made, or it has been made, and it's either going to be met, that deadline, or a lot of work that's already been done is going to disappear. What was it last year? We had Colleen Wright on this show, and she did a great job of detailing that out. We'll probably get her back on as things develop again here. She's from the Tampa Bay Times.
Right. I think the important part to know, right, in all of this is that there's nothing that can force Stu Sternberg to sell. Right. That's the first part. The second part is to know what he paid for the franchise. Right, for his portion. So I know he doesn't own 100% of the team,
right,
but he owns a significant amount. And from what I've heard, and I think you probably followed this as well when it was going on, apparently he pressured a lot of the minority owners over time, through all the time that he's been an owner, to sell him their stake at reduced rates compared to what he may have been forced to pay on the open market, right? So, and then that's why the remaining minority owners took him to court, and I think it's still in process. I haven't heard a resolution, so it's still going through the courts process. So there's that hanging up over him. But if you have, you have to figure that whatever he paid for the team has been paid off a long time ago. There's no debts and going on.
200 million, and back in 2004,
200 million? Okay.
200 million.
Right. So 200 million he paid. So that is probably paid for and good and done. Every year he rakes in another 50 to 75 million, right? For the revenues that he isn't spending because of everything he's taking in from the league, from revenues,
Right.
from everything else. So you could average it out to somewhere between 50 and 100 million, we'll say, that he's making per year. Why on earth would you give that up, in perpetuity for a quick buck? This is why, I mean, yes, he wants the stadium built. Yes, he wants that resolved, but there's no pressure. He owns one of 30 seats at the table in franchises, right? But what I will say, in my opinion, is the value would be, and if the commissioner has an angle on somebody that he wants to own it because he wants to resolve it in Florida, we know that Stu Sternberg has a good relationship with a group in Montreal. Nothing says, like Jeffrey Loria, who went from Montreal to Miami, Stu Sternberg could become an owner of the Montreal group when expansion comes around and use some of the money that he rakes in from the sale of the Rays to do that, right? He doesn't have to own a franchise in Montreal that is from Tampa. It can be
Right.
a brand new franchise. So there's a lot to consider in this entire equation, but I think you're gonna go more into who is bidding on the Rays right now and then who might want a piece of the pie.
Well, it's good to understand who the players are, and it's good to understand the history of Stu and his options. And you're talking about Montreal and Bronfman. And when initially there was a conversation of having the team play here half the year and playing in
Right.
Montreal half the year, which fans here really kind of got upset about. And initially, I think Manfred was not against it, but shortly thereafter, he turned and said, no, we're not going to do that. And kind of left Stu out to that's you just got to deal with it, Stu. And I gotta say, whatever you think about Stu Sternberg, he's had conflict that a lot of people just shouldn't have to deal with anyway. I mean, the whole idea of him getting this deal together, been trying to get the deal together with St. Pete for all this time, and then that hurricane came through and just tossed everything away.
Mm.
Uh, the problem was, I think, in a lot of ways, was that the Rays did not have a plan for what if, not necessarily that you're going to think a hurricane's going to get, but I mean, it's like if you go to buy a house or if you have somebody come in and you're having the home worked on and say, I've got a budget of 150,000. Okay, well, great. This is what we want to do. Oh yeah, we took the walls down, found out you got termites. Oh no, God. Oh, that's going to be another $10,000. Oh, and by the way, we say we got to rewire the entire house? Well, those are things, man. Those are things that happen when you're buying a house. So it's surprising to me that the Rays seem so surprised that they weren't ready to have funds to deal with something like this tragedy of a hurricane.
I have to stop you there because the president of the Rays said something about this, which I agree with. Their problem is not that they don't have the funds. Their problem is that they don't feel like they should be on the hook for it all. That's what and honestly, the clause is exactly that you will be on the hook for it.
Yeah.
So really, the lawyers, the people that went through this process with Stu should have explained, hey, by the way, do you know that if the roof gets ripped off, you're on the hook? If an orca jumps out of the water and lands on the top of the roof, it doesn't matter what it is, you're on the hook. And I mean, somebody as smart and business savvy as Stu Sternberg should have known that was the case. And he does know, which is why it's such a tedious position and there's nothing bluntly being done or said yet, right? It's
Right.
more finagling.
And let's talk to you about a big part of this whole uh, redevelopment of the new Trop, if whatever you want to call it, new stadium in St. Pete, was this development of a business district all around there. And we're talking about the gas plant district. And there was going to be all this retail, hotels, entertainment, the African American Museum, all these different things, these components that were going to be brought together. And Stu had the good sense to negotiate that deal first before getting everything done with the stadium. Now, in the end, for that to actually all happen, even though that deal was done, it was still going to be incumbent upon them to have the deal with the stadium as well. I don't think they could do it exclusively, even though they were two different projects. They were kind of pinky tied together there.
Right.
And so, but it's been a long, hard ride. And as we come to this March 31st date, when the Rays got to show they're going to have 700 million and they're serious about doing everything, in the midst of all that, as I was talking about earlier, JP Peterson finds that, it looks like there's some people interested in buying this team. I think you were the one who sent it to me first. They're talking about the, what's the DeBartolo? I can't speak. The DeBartolo family, the ones who had worked with the 49ers and just recently got pardoned by, I don't know, was this time or the last time, number 47 or 49 that gave Mr. DeBartolo a pardon. But yeah. So he's working with also the DePardo families with Joe Molloy, who has been with the Yankees organization, I believe, at some point, a minority owner. So they are a group that's interesting. And another one, which tickles me anytime I think about Dex Imaging. I go into the Rays Stadium and you see all those high-end seats right behind home plate, and Dex Imaging's all over it. So that was Dan Doyle Jr. He's the one who's the CEO of that company. And what's interesting too, if you look at it, is back in 2023, there was him, and actually there's another guy, I can't think of his full name, Tripp, something or other, and they were looking at possibly buying the Rays at that time. But then Mr. Doyle stepped away from that, but obviously he's renewed that interest now. So we got the Doyle group with Dex Imaging. We've got Joe Molloy with the DeBartolo family. And then on top of that, there is the mystery investor. And Carter McCain, who's a lawyer, I think, from this area, or at least an investor of sorts. He is what's called an all-star team of investors group that he's representing. Now, Matt, you may or may not have heard this, but none of these people are actually from Tampa, is my understanding. So there's still a big question mark and a mist around who they are. But so between these three groups, Joe Molloy in the DeBartolo family, the Doyle group, and also with whoever Carter McCain. So we've got three different groups who are interested in getting the Rays. The one last thing I want to point out about Carter McCain is, from what I read, is that he is not directly soliciting Stu Sternberg, but he's soliciting through the commissioner's office for the Rays, which I'm curious about if that's even possible, but we'll see. Hell, there's a whole lot of something.
Is Darryl Shaw part of any of these groups?
Not that I can see, because I was curious too. I mean, he's bought up so much of Ybor.
Right. Exactly. That's why I'm wondering. Like, there has to be an angle where I think they've mentioned that that's the location they would like to end up in if this purchase or this sale goes through at any point in time. So to me, if one of those groups had him on board, it would kind of point to a front runner in Tampa, I would think. But yeah, all of those options that you present, like, they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, I would say.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Like I said, I told you a month ago, I'm not talking about this daggone stadium thing until the March 31st. I'm not going to talk about it. But with three owners groups coming here, potentially looking at it, I got to at least say something. And it is just goofy as hell. But you bring up Darryl Shaw, and I've said Ybor because he has an investment in that area. And we were looking very seriously at having a stadium there. What's interesting, too, is that there's been other locations that have been offered as potential look for beyond St. Pete. And one of them is the State Fairgrounds. It's interesting. I use the word state because I'm not sure how, if Ron DeSantis would have to give a blessing on this or not. And let's play this. Let's go back to the Trump thing. So you got to DeBartolo, who's been pardoned or
Mhm.
a while back by Trump.
Right.
And then if you bring him in as the owner, and if you have DeSantis, who's a devotee of the president, and there's working there, would we see the potential here? And you think back, if you go way back in time, Donald was actually trying to start a new league. It was starting out in DC, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other show.
Hmm.
Uh, but so the fairgrounds, Ybor, and by the fairgrounds, we also had the Hard Rock nearby. So the
Mhm.
Hard Rock Cafe is nearby, and then there's still some musings about somewhere around Orlando. So I think we'll keep a team in this area no matter what happens. I'm
Mhm.
just not sure where they're going to be, and I don't know. Thoughts?
I think I've told you what my ultimate scenario is, which is basically you boot the Yankees A affiliate out and you build there and you let Stu keep running it and you don't, you let the other ones be part of new ownership groups in Nashville and Utah, wherever else that may be involved in terms of expansion. To me, that's the ultimate play. But you're bringing up a point in terms of the political side of things, which is why it's very surprising because I don't remember like the last time I remember an MLB commissioner pressuring an owner to sell
Mhm.
was when the McCourts were going through their issues in Los Angeles. And I mean, it was so much of a distraction that it was ruining what ended up being a great franchise after the sale. So it turned out to be a huge success, right? So I think they're envisioning the same kind of thing in Tampa, is that, all this brouhaha and the way that Stu Sternberg has antagonized the entire region over and over and over again to the point where he probably did squash some deals because of his attitude and inability to make nice with people of all stripes. But to his credit, he stuck to his guns and to his ethics, and he continues to have pride nights and he continues to have heritage nights for Canadians, Colombians, Brazilians, Greeks. It doesn't matter what ethnicity you are covered in Rays Heritage Days. Um, and it's a great thing to have, especially in a state in like Florida that needs more of that
Oh yeah.
represented in a strong way. So my fear is that the commissioner is trying to appease Trump, who isn't going to enjoy any of those things going on
Yeah.
at the stadium. And in doing so is pressuring Stu out. Now, I know Stu is probably hard-headed enough to stick it out. Whether or not he will, especially when we talked about the financial, if you're sitting on a landmine that's worth 1.6 billion dollars to you, and then you can take that 1.6 billion, put 1 billion in the bank and use the 600 million other ones to be part of a new ownership group somewhere else. Why wouldn't you? Right? To me, that's the play for Stu. It just makes sense. And then you're off the hook. You can go live up north and be far away from whatever nonsense that you obviously, clash with a little bit in that
Yeah.
area. But it's still, like I said, it doesn't give you that steady stream of 100 million every year, right? That's also just as lucrative. You do that for 20 years, and then who knows what the value of that franchise is at that point. You might be able to sell it for 3 or 4 billion dollars at that point. So there's no loss on Stu Sternberg's part. I'm not going to weep because he's forced to sell the franchise. Nobody should feel bad for him if he does get pushed out. He will be fine. The spoon will be golden for his kids and his kids' kids and their kids' and they'll all eat well and live long, happy lives. Let's hope. But I think for the Rays fans, they just want a resolution. Like you, they've been tortured, literally tortured since 2008 about the stadium thing. And it's been nonsense. It's been, all kinds of hooks and riddles and people trying to decode these things. Like in World War II or whatever, they have these movies where you get the code and you're trying to decode it. That's what we feel like when we're trying to guess how this stadium thing is going to end up. Nobody knows. There's not even 18 days away, Mark, and we still can't figure out what is going to happen. I mean, there's going to be a movie about this. I don't think Brad Pitt will play the lead role, but maybe George Clooney can take on the role of Stu Sternberg, right? I don't know. Somebody with some panache in the same way, and we'll have another great baseball movie. I just want a resolution for the Rays fans. Like, just get it done, get them a new stadium, get them seats they can enjoy for another 30 years or more, and then we can laugh about all the nonsense afterwards.
I like your idea still of the George Steinbrenner Stadium.
Mhm.
I just cannot get rid of this. Hang on, man. Sorry.
No problem. Take your time. I can give you some elevator music at the same time. Doo, 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 doo.
Perfect. Perfect. Oh gosh. No, no, I like your idea about the George Steinbrenner Stadium. I think it's going to be interesting this year to see the Rays with 11,000 seats. There's some talk about expansion of a couple thousand. I'm not sure if they're going to get any of that done. But anyway it goes, you'll have a full house quite a bit. And what is it? We're looking at the 47 of the first 59 games are going to be played at home because of the heat the rest of the year.
Right,
And I am really curious. I'm really curious to see how fans react.
right.
Before the show, you and I were talking. I thought about going out and see spring training game over there to see the Detroit Tigers playing in Lakeland, right down the road from me, and they were playing the Rays. And I started looking at StubHub and the rest of them and said, "Oh my gosh, they want what for what?" And
Mhm.
I'm a cheapo. I'll tell you that right now, man. I'm a cheap son of a gun. But the tickets were going up quite a bit, and I did watch part of it on the tube today on MLB. It was interesting to see. I mean, it was neat to see that stadium about like 8,500 people, mostly full. I mean, there was a pocket of a seat here or there that wasn't full, but outside of that, with people out there on the berm, quite a bit. It was great. It felt good. Talked earlier today about the temperature being like 73 degrees. It was a wonderful, wonderful day. And all I could think was that place at 8,500 people. I love the idea of being over at George Steinbrenner with similar weather,
Mhm.
and it's just going to be fantastic.
They've got to be able to find a way to mist people or have you remember like the old Colosseum in Italy, like it had those like cloth overhangs that would go out, right, and keep everybody a little bit cooler,
Yep.
provide more shade or whatever. There's got to be a way to do that kind of thing and still keep it mostly an outdoor stadium. But I think ultimately they would want to have some sort of covering that they can put on. I don't know. I just think the the outdoors, thing for like I'll give you one example, right? For me, from Montreal, saw hundreds of games at the Big O in Montreal in what I would call an underground cement stadium. It's like watching it in an underground parking lot and they just put a carpet over it, right? And then, hey, go play ball. So when I went to Fenway the first time, it was like I was watching baseball for the first time ever. I had never considered how awe-opening it would be to have this, outdoors, fresh air, fresh grass, like it just completely different feel to it as a fan. So I can only imagine even as a player how different that is as well. So I think the Rays, this experience at Steinbrenner Field could open up their eyes to some other opportunities, especially in the stadium design. And when you think about it, because as they're playing those games and going through that process, they're going to learn things. And they're going to say, this works, this doesn't work. We could do this, we could not do this. And from a Major League Baseball point of view, if they're willing to bend the schedule on a regular basis, not to the extent that they did this time,
Right.
but to a lesser extent, um, maybe that does open the door for an outdoor-ish kind of stadium that's a little bit less boxy than what they had envisioned in other locations.
Well, that would be something though, if there's a way to provide more shade, because that's the key. I mean, with
Mhm.
Karen and I, we go sometimes to the minor league games around here in the Gulf Complex League. the Florida Complex League rather. And it's interesting because one of the first things we check is, okay, where's the shade that time of day around? Okay, where what picking our seats? Yeah, all right. It's
Yeah, that's
that
smart.
it's a major consideration. And I'll pay a little more for those shaded seats, my friend.
I
Well,
remember talking to some of the pitchers that are in the minor leagues for the Rays. I can't remember exactly which one, but I could guess on a few. But they were saying how, they'd be said, "Oh, do I really need to go out for another inning?" Like they're just completely dehydrated,
yeah.
so could not feel their arm because they're just completely out. And they're like, "Yeah, this is not good."
Jeez.
Uh,
It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, and that's the thing. You got to keep the young men safe out there. So
mhm,
we'll see how this all develops this year. Let's see what else is going on. I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about. I mean, there's a lot more I have written down about the values and who's going to be putting up what money, but most folks can find that anyway online. Uh, but it is interesting. Again, notice we talked at the beginning about the development plan for the area, where like St. Pete was going to be giving up like 65 acres of land, well, might as well for the price they were getting the
mhm,
raise. There's a lot at stake for Stu, and I can see why he would like to keep the deal over there. But and I want to say thank you to pointing out how Stu has made a commitment to community, because the Rays and he do a lot as far as contributions and supporting folks. And whether it be some things like with Pride Night also, or what you say with Canada or all the other heritage. And it's his, like you said, it's gotten him in trouble sometimes. I love that. I mean, if you feel strongly about something and you're willing to stand up for it, I salute you for that. And yeah, I think he's gotten some resistance from the governor's office before,
mhm.
because of putting together things and supporting things like Pride Night. I don't know. So those parts of what he does still have an appeal for me. So I would not be opposed to him as an owner, but I would love to see that come back over here into Tampa and that George Steinbrenner. I like that you put those two pieces together for me, man, and
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'll feel for all the poor folks in St. Pete and Pinellas County for all they've done, but I like that idea a lot.
Well, they could inherit the single A Yankees affiliate, right? They probably would draw more people out there because of it,
Ooh, it's true though.
right? No, but I mean, if you're somebody from New York, you're visiting Tampa and you're enjoying the beach, in St. Pete,
Oh yeah.
uh, in Clearwater or whatever, then you definitely would consider going to an A-ball game and seeing the rehab of Giancarlo Stanton and his broken elbows,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
all this kind of funky stuff you get to see. It's Yeah, I think there's legs to that as well, and I don't know if it would be Al Lang. I don't know if it'd be. It's not exactly as central to the plans that development plans that they're talking about. I'm sure they would want something more significant for that. But I think if you're talking about having a co-located stadium of the Rowdies and the single A affiliate, for the Yankees, that's doable. That's
Yeah.
something you can manage, right? And then you can still build up the amount of people to a significant amount. You might even be able to go up to 18 or 20,000, for the number of fans that you'd be able to get to a Rowdies game over time. Maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Possibilities, possibilities. That's what it's all about.
Mhm.
Well, we're going to give them a rest for a
Yeah.
moment.
Let's
And
talk injuries, Mark. Let's talk
how
injuries.
did you know where I was going next? Good Lord. Let's get rolling with the injuries, my friend. Do you want to talk Rays or do you want to talk Yankees?
You go ahead. You start it and I'll follow up.
Oh gosh. Well, I was thinking Yankees because my gosh, this has been an ugly, ugly couple of weeks for them. You had, let's see, who was the Gill? I can't think of Gill's first. Luis Gill, and they lost him. I don't know how long he's going to be out. But the big, big, big loss for the Yankees. My gosh. I mean, the Jarrett Coe, as you say, he's uh, they're saying what he's now. I think today they announced he's going to have the Tommy John surgery,
He's
and,
having a Tommy John.
and you're not going to be back the same year with that. I mean, look
No,
how long Shane McClanahan was out. Jeez.
they have him, and then they had Lewis Heel, like you said. I think it was a shoulder or a lat strain that he's dealing with. So they're kind of combined right into one. You never know where the actual issue is.
Yeah.
We're hopeful he'll come back, but shoulders are finicky. So I don't know. He pushed himself hard last year. Like he really amped up the use of pitches in key moments and completely, he went from being a reliever, for those that don't know, into a starting role. So
Yep.
the increase in workload was significant for him. And as we've seen a lot of times, when you ramp things up that much, that ends up, biting you in the end, the vast majority of the time. So that was the second one. And then Giancarlo Stanton's elbows. I just can't get over those. So people forget also that they dealt away Gleyber Torres, right? Or didn't they lost him in free agency? They didn't deal him away. And then DJ LeMahieu's out as well. So you've got a lot of professional hitters that are out, and a lot of their, I think their three top run producers for last year, other than Soto and Judge, right? So if you take the next three beyond those two guys, they're all out. So it's going to be interesting to see which of their young guys rise to the occasion and actually, develop a little bit. Like Anthony Volpe is a guy that you could envision taking up a little bit more space, right? But how much pressure does it put on that group of young players coming in? Now you're relying on Cody Bellinger, who's brand new to the team.
Hmm.
Paul Goldschmidt, who's a veteran and can probably, calm a lot of people down, but his bat is slowing. So he's going to put more pressure on himself to produce. And then the young guys. So everybody on that squad, other than Aaron Judge, is just kind of like, you want me to do what? Like, I'm carrying the load now? Like, what is this? What do you mean we have to score more runs because our pitching's going to suck? Like, what is, what is this?
It's crazy, Matt. It's absolutely crazy. You mentioned Gleyber Torres. I saw a little bit of him today because he's playing with the Tigers now. And yeah, but coming back to the Yankees, Giancarlo, we've seen a lot of this coming for a while. He's been experiencing some difficulties for a while. And you can't do what Garrett Cole does for as long as he does it without seeing this coming.
Mhm.
Now, they didn't get Juan Soto, but they took that money and gave it to Mr. Max Fried. And he is definitely going to be able to help when it comes to pitching with that team.
But he also has injury issues, right?
Right. Perfect fit for the Yankees.
Yeah. So and I was listening to Jim Bowman go through this on MLB radio, and he's completely right. Like every guy on their roster has an issue, whether it's Marcus Stroman underperforming, whether it's Clark Schmidt, not knowing what he's going to be able to provide, and is he going to go to improve or is he going to take a step backwards? Nobody really knows. And Max Fried has had a lot of health issues over time, and he's not, a sure bet. I understand the skills there. I will never, go against that part of his game, but there's a reason the Braves stepped away and didn't want to amp up the ante to keep him. A lot of times that has to do with injury issues. The Giants, the San Francisco Giants, did the same thing with Carlos Rodon. And as sure as that, when he got to the Yankees, he had injury issues again. So he's not a sure bet either. So the whole season, and I think, that's part of why Brian Cashman isn't actually jumping on a move right now. He wants to know who falls on, who falls off. Because if so many guys fall off that it doesn't make sense to keep going for it, I think he has to sell some players at that point.
Yeah.
He's going to be trading at the deadline because their roster is nowhere near where it needs to be a playoff team in the AL East. I would put the Rays roster above theirs right now, for sure, without a doubt. And people that aren't paying attention. They really aren't, because the Rays have the healthiest pitching going so far, knock on wood, and they have the kind of lineup that is going to surprise a lot of people. And I say that because it's better balanced. They're not dealing with all the left-handed bad injuries that they dealt with last year to start the season. And so that's going to give Kevin Cash a lot more balance to work with. And that's really all that held them back last year. If they had that, for the first 2 months, they would have won 86 to 88 games and probably been in a playoff spot. So I think people are sleeping on the Rays more than I can remember. And I don't understand really why. They just don't have any faith in their lineup whatsoever for whatever reason. Even though they still have Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau and everybody, Junior Caminero, who's a phenom coming up through. I mean, just those three alone should tell you you're going to score a decent amount of runs. Like it's not going to be a empty shell. And they're willing at the same time to give all the credit in the world to the Jays, who are dealing with their own injuries as well. Max Scherzer, who put up that great start early on, he's not making this next start because he has a thumb issue now. He's as unsure as any of the Yankees pitchers that I just mentioned, right? Because of his age and the amount of innings that he has under his belt. But even beyond that, like they had another injury issue. I think it was Alek Manoah who's out for the season and Eric Swanson. So right there you have, I think Alek Manoah could come back mid-season after the All-Star break. But Eric Swanson is also dealing with, and he's one of their most important relievers, right? And then you move over to the Boston Red Sox, who we poured a lot of praise on the Red Sox, let's be honest. And Brian Bello is having significant injury issues. He's not going to be ready to start the season. I think they've held him back is more than anything. So it's not a Jarrett Cole kind of thing, but he goes on the IL along with Crawford, Murphy, Sandoval, and now we're hearing that Lucas Giolito has a hamstring issue and he's getting an MRI. So, all of a sudden you start going through these teams and their issues, and then we're not done. The Orioles have Grayson Rodriguez and Andrew Kittredge off for the first, few months of the season. So looking at that entire bubble, you're thinking, already the Orioles were without front end pitching for the most part, right? They're hoping Eflin can do it. They're hoping Morton can help Grayson out, but they're also getting longer in the tooth, and they're also, they have a ceiling of some sort, right? They're not going to be the same kind of ace that they were hoping Grayson Rodriguez was going to be. So, and then on top of that, you put the Rays getting Shane McClanahan back.
Yeah.
So you have the reverse story for them. So, Mark, I'm gonna have to really pen down, and get my revised power rankings before the season starts, because I'm telling you, like my head's on a swivel right now, going, who's what, where, who's hurt, who isn't, who's not bubble wrapped. I want to know.
Oh, no, man. That's pretty good rundown, man. I tell you. Oh gosh, I do want, not today, but I do want to take a look back at your top 50 prospects at the end of the spring training season and see if you want to pick maybe 5 or 10 of them to talk about since we've gotten through there. But it's coming back to the injuries. Yeah, man, I love the idea of seeing Shane come back. And we actually have, knock on wood or whatever else you want to knock on, but we've got a good looking roster here. We've got a healthy looking pitching team right now, and seeing some of those familiar faces like Drew and the other ones out there, it's an exciting time for the Rays. And as a team and as a fan, I'm looking forward to this season over at George Steinbrenner.
Like, how great is it that they're sticking with Curtis Mead?
Oh,
They're giving him that extra shot, right? And they're giving him that playing time, and they're being patient. Like, I don't remember the Rays being the most patient of teams in the past, right? Like they were a little bit gun-ish, like in terms of if you perform, you're this or that. So I'm enjoying the fact that they gave him that second shot and it's working out well for him. I don't know how the pen is going to end up looking by the time they're done. And I think that's one of the major stories that's left. but their roster is going to be versatile. When you look at the bench they're going to have, I mean, Richie Palacios can play second in all the outfield spots, right? And they've said that they're going to use him in the outfield. Jose Caballero, they're going to use him all over the infield and all over the outfield, all three spots. So he's a six-position guy. And he's looked great in center field. So when you have his speed and his versatility, that's a huge bonus for Cash. So now you have a left-handed guy that can do what Palacios can do. You have a right-handed guy that can do what Caballero can do. Well, then your bench is really, a great thing. You add Curtis Mead onto that, plays first and third. You've covered all the freaking bases, and you got like a guy who can actually hit off the bench. So I like the way the bench is looking. I don't know who the backup catcher is going to end up being. I think there's a chance that the Rays will make a move. Some teams have had catcher injuries. Maybe they'll dangle Ben Roorvelt to one of those, and then Logan Driscoll will get in there. I think they really liked what Logan Driscoll was able to do. So that's something to look for. I think the Rays will make one or two moves before the beginning of the season. They always seem to cash in on something and make a commitment that needs to open some space up. So you're going to see some moves. Like, I know Brian Cashman said he's not going to fill that void right away, but if something comes up that opens up an opportunity, I think you'll see that. And I still believe Nolan Arenado may be a Yankee before it's all said and done. Ooh. If they can figure out the cash aspect, because they need a boost of morale. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to come from Aaron Boone.
Oh,
he's not that kind of guy. He's not a cheerleader.
No, he's the sub dude on that particular category. Wow. Well, I don't know, man. I think, like I said, it's going to be an exciting season. I'm looking forward to seeing what these Rays are going to be able to do. And I know that all the other fans out there are as well. We spent a lot of time talking at the beginning about these three groups that are looking at the Rays, but at the end, we just want to go out there and see our team play.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Any other nuggets you want to carry on with here today? Anything else you think we should touch on?
I think always remember that Ha-Seong Kim is on his way.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think that's the thing with the Rays also. Like I mentioned, the people sleeping on the Rays. And Danny Jansen and Ha-Seong Kim, once they're both healthy, they are going to significantly increase the offensive punch and consistency you have through the lineup, and the better at bats and the more assured play, right? And I think with the pitching included in there, the clutch abilities that Danny Jansen has in that lineup, I think the Rays are going to do some damage. Health willing, they are going to have a lot of fun. And if they get off to a hot start, probably not like the hottest one they had just a few years ago, but if they get to a hot start that gives them that confidence, they have the ability to add at the deadline, and they have the pieces in their system coming up to support them at the same time. So it's a mean combination of things going on. And wouldn't it be something if you get a new stadium, you get, a playoff run, and you maybe make it to the World Series in that same year? Like, those would be a trifecta that I think all Rays fans would enjoy a lot.
I'm looking forward to it, my friend.
Yeah.
I also want to pause and thank the good folks, the nurses and doctors. I had to make a stop with our good friends over the Southern Florida Baptist Hospital this week, and everybody over there was great. So not necessarily a place you want to spend any vacation time, but hey, you got good folks, things work out. So thanks to them. And Matt, like I said, I can't wait. Can't wait. Just what is it? Maybe is it 2 weeks before opening day?
Yeah. It's only 2 weeks, man. That's it.
Good gravy. Let's have some fun, folks. All right. Raise up.
I like it.
Oh, thank you all again for joining us here today, and we will talk with you again real soon.
Just a reminder, you can find Matt at matgermain.bsky.social. That's at mattgermain.bsky.social, or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.